I would like to call the village board to order for Tuesday, December 17th, 2024. Roll call, please.
President Krause,
Here.
Trustee Service,
Here.
Trustee Paul, Trustee Zerbal,
Here.
Trustee Atkinson,
Here.
Trustee Krieger,
Here.
Trustee Flukie.
Here.
Please stand for the pledge.
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remember our men and women throughout the world in uniform. I have no changes to the agenda. I need a motion to approve.
So move.
Second?
Motion and a second to approve the agenda as presented. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed. Motion carried. Action on the minutes from the November 26, 2024 Village Board meeting.
I do have one change. Point number 6 says to Parkland Avenue. That should be Packerland.
You know what, Jay, when, just that you said that, I remember seeing that, but I just went, oh, well, I know that's Packerland. Okay. Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve that.
So move.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed. Motion carried. Number 6, comments from the public must be limited to items not on the agenda. Must state your name and address. You're limited to 5 minutes. The board's role is to listen and not discuss the item. Personnel issues cannot be discussed nor individuals named, and the board is not able to take action at this meeting. Is there anybody from the public that would like to make any comments on items not on tonight's agenda? Anybody who'd like to make comments on items not on tonight's agenda? Moving on. Number 7, written communications or announcements. Anybody have anything? Okay, I do have a comment that I would like to make, and I'm only making it because people are coming in to pay their taxes, and I've talked to several different municipalities, and, you know, we all sat here 2 weeks ago and made sure that we did not raise taxes. We kept our levy flat, and it all has to do with what I said at that meeting. It all boils down to the equalized value of your community. So the value that the state puts on your community is what determines the tax rate. And unfortunately, we don't have any control over that. We have absolutely none. And our equalized value last year went up, or this year, 12%. So that's why everybody saw that. It's every community just about in Brown County had that same thing happen. So if you get any calls, if anybody calls anybody, or if anybody would like to talk through this, I talked to somebody Friday afternoon, you know, have them call me, have them call the office, we'll get somebody, because it is very, very convoluted formula on how they actually figure out the equalized value. It does also changes with the fact that we don't have personal property tax anymore. They said that they will make you whole. Our formula doesn't kind of make sure that we got completely made whole, so that's another component. So just if anybody calls or says anything, you know, tell them to give us a call. Okay. Moving on, number 8, action on the consent agenda. A, consider, discuss, act on change of agent Quick Trip, Inc., DBA Quick Trip number 114, Mandy Budrecki. B, consider, discuss, act on release and relocation of a utility easement at 2352 Dorn Drive. C, receive, accept, place on file Phase 2 of the Capital Improvement Plan. D, consider, discuss, act on budgeted expenditures for period between 11/21/2024 through 12/12/2024. E, receive, accept November 2024 investment report. F, receive, accept November 2024 financial statements. G, receive, accept December 2024 Public Works Department reports. H, consider, discuss, act on resolution number R 12-2-24, accepting WEDC Vibrant Spaces Grant. And I, consider, discuss, act on Resolution R 12-4-24, acknowledging the village's contribution to the Promenade Development Project and the Brown County Library. I need a motion to approve, or if anybody would like anything pulled out.
Move to approve as presented if there's no questions.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to receive and accept the consent agenda as presented. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. 9, this is a public hearing. Public hearing regarding a rezoning request for parcel VA-838, 1375 West Main Avenue from BP Business Park to P Public Use. Aaron?
All right, thank you. I will share my screen and just bring up a map of the proposed rezoning for reference. While it's being brought up, the requested rezone is from BP Business Park to P Public Use. The subject property is VA-838 on West Main Avenue, just west of Sandacres Drive. The request is to, we're just kind of working through some technical, there we go. Got it, there we go. As you can see up on the screen, the proposed rezoning is the roughly triangle shaped property indicated on West Main Avenue. The request is from Mock Village Partners to rezone the property from BP Business Park to P Public Use to allow for use of the property for school related activities. We did receive letters of support for the proposed rezoning from the Ashwaubenon and West Appear school districts. If you have any, I guess we'll follow up with the public hearing and then I'll get in more detail during the action item.
Okay, is there anybody here who would like to speak for or against this item? Anybody here who would like to speak for or against this item? Anybody here who would like to speak for or against this item? Okay, I need a motion to close the public hearing.
Move to close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion and a second to close the public hearing. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Okay, on to action items. 10A, consider, discuss, act on a rezoning request for parcel VA-838, 1375 West Main Avenue from BP Business Park to P Public Use. Aaron?
Thank you. As discussed, it is proposed rezoning from BP Business Park to P Public Use for the subject property indicated prior during the public hearing. For background, again, it is to utilize the property for school related activities. The Ashwaubenon Planning Commission did recommend approval of the rezoning at its December 3rd, 2024 meeting. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Otherwise, the applicant is also in the audience if you have questions for them.
Okay, does anybody have any questions?
I'll move to approve.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the rezoning for parcel VA-838. Any other comments? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. 10B, consider, discuss, act on a site plan review request for a third wall sign at 789 Armed Forces Drive, parcel VA-41-4-E. Aaron?
The requested third wall sign is for the Great North Commons currently under construction at 789 Armed Forces Drive. This would be located on the east side of the building. Under our code, we do allow for 2 wall signs by right, be able to be administratively approved by staff. When there's a request for a third wall sign, it does require approval by the Site Plan Review Committee. And then also, because it is within the Sports Entertainment Zoning District, any actions within those areas from site plan do need to be forwarded to the Plan Commission and Village Board for final approval. Both Site Plan Review Committee and Plan Commission did recommend approval of the third wall sign as presented, but there was an additional condition, I should mention, that the east elevation signage, which is the requested third wall sign, be adequately shielded to prevent any glare into the guest windows of the Quality Inn Hotel. As mentioned, Site Plan Review Committee and Plan Commission did recommend approval with that condition.
I'll move to approve this third wall sign on the Great Northern Commons. It was approved by the other two committees Aaron mentioned.
One question, I'm sorry.
Okay, okay, you're gonna second it, Chris? And that is with the condition that, of the
condition,
screening?
Yes.
Okay, Teresa.
Just a question for you, Aaron. How are they gonna go about shielding that so it doesn't affect, what would they use to do that?
So typically what you'll see is you'll see some shielding underneath it. Again, the proposed signage actually will be above the windows. So it'd be shielding below it if necessary. If it becomes an issue, we'll certainly deal with it internally, work with the hotel and the business to make sure it's addressed.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? We have a motion and a second to approve with the conditions. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. 10C, consider, discuss, act on a presentation and update on the municipal facilities condition assessment and space utilization study. Welcome.
I'll kick this off, Madam President, quickly as they get kind of set up and coordinated. I just got to share my screen to help them present, so I'm going to do that quickly. With us tonight are representatives from Kraus Anderson as well as Wold Architects. I'll let them kind of introduce themselves as they work through their presentation. As you recall, as part of the 2024 budget, the village had implemented a facility condition assessment as well as a space utilization study to help the village ultimately plan capital improvements for Village Hall, the public works facility behind Village Hall, as well as potential for Fire Station number 2. They are in the midst of their study. They have, by and large, completed much of the facility condition assessment. Now they're working through the process of facility planning from a space utilization standpoint. So I'll pass it over to, I'm not sure who's leading the charge over there. Is that Melissa or JR?
It's gonna be Jonathan.
Jonathan is going to lead us here, and just let me know when you want me to click through on the slide.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joel. We'll lock arms and go down the.
Pull
Could
those
you
mics up to you.
state your name and address also for the record? Thank you.
Sure. I'm Jonathan Loze with Wold Architects. Our office is out of St. Paul.
And I'm Melissa Stein, also with Wold Architects and Engineers.
James Wrongsit, Cross Anderson, out of Madison.
I appreciate it, Madam President. Thanks for the intro, Joel. I think I'm going to turn this way so I can kind of see what's going on here. We're going to just start with a kind of overall view of what our process has been so far, and really it breaks into sort of two parts. There's a functional assessment of the facilities, and then there's the condition assessment of the facilities. And so that's an easy way to distinguish between sort of the scope of work that Wold is conducting and the scope of work that Kraus Anderson is conducting. But really at the end of all of this, I think the whole idea is that that all comes together into a more comprehensive plan. We'll look at some guiding principles that just help set the stage for what we're trying to achieve, and talk about some surveys and interviews that we conducted with each department, and then talk about pass it over to KA to talk about that condition assessment. And then Melissa's gonna go through sort of some of the just information that we got from all the different departments and sort of high level, some of the deficiencies and needs that we started to see throughout those conversations. So just an overview of the process. I kind of gave, maybe you already kind of heard some bits and pieces as I did my intro, but we always like to set sort of some goals and objectives early on, as opposed to just starting to look at buildings and come up with a bunch of options. It really needs to be seated in some consensus building and goals and objectives that there are amongst, the whole core group. And usually we like to get feedback from, the board as well. So obviously if there's adjustments or thoughts that you all have on that, we are more than willing to take that feedback here today as well. And then really gathering the data, so getting the information on the buildings, getting the information in certain terms of some of the maintenance needs that are there. That's sort of internal on the condition assessment. But really more actively involved with discussions with each department on the functional side of it. And then really agreement on needs. So that's kind of where we're at right now, is that we've got the condition assessment, we've got the functional sort of assessment piece and how that translates into maybe square footage needs. And I think our goal is to really build some consensus amongst the board and our core planning group so that when we really start to look at different options, there's consistent view about what the real needs are, and we're not, you know, trying to march down a path that really isn't sustainable, or somebody doesn't agree with the approach that we're taking. Beyond there, like I said, we developed some options that ultimately integrate some of the condition assessment and the functional piece of it, and then we'll evaluate those and provide some final recommendations. So I maybe mention our core planning group. That's just the group that we really use as a sounding board to help guide the process along the way. You know, certainly you could hire a consultant and they could go back into their office and just do it all on their own. But really that falls short of gaining the consensus amongst, you know, the village itself. And so having that core planning group to set those goals and objectives, to help us interpret the data, to help sort of set the stage for providing recommendations to the board is of utmost importance, I think, in our process. So then we get into just some of the guiding principles that we've sort of developed as a group. I'm going to hand that over to Melissa to talk through those, but I think the last bullet point on the last slide, and you don't have to go back there, Joel, but the big one is just gaining ownership. So really, like I said before, we could go back to our office and just come up with all these grandiose ideas, but really talking to individual departments, talking to staff, getting true feedback from the people that really use these spaces is really important, so that as we kind of talk about moving forward with any sort of plan or approach, that everybody within the village feels like, yeah, I was heard and I'm behind that plan.
Yeah, thanks, Jonathan. So like Jonathan mentioned, we have our core planning group. We really want to set the tone with creating the criteria, and those are really the objectives and I would say the goals. We call them guiding principles because this process is somewhat of a cyclical thing, and as we create options, we might understand that an option might fit really well in terms of what we want to provide and maybe meets all the needs, but maybe it contradicts or doesn't quite work with one of our guiding principles. And so we always kind of want to go back and see, okay, is it the guiding principle that needs to be adjusted, or is it that actually is a very important thing and we need to relook at how we're reevaluating our options? And so this process is cyclical. So we do these guiding principles to kind of help create that baseline of understanding and need as we move forward. So I'll just run through these real quick. The solution should accommodate the long-term needs. We established at the moment that would be 20 years. Obviously, we can look out further than that, but we get very subjective once you get kind of past that 20-year mark. And so 20-year really sets us up for kind of a short, mid, long-term approach when we look at the needs for all of your facilities in terms of workload indicators, staff growth, population changes. 20 years is a really great way for us to kind of measure those and create some metrics. Solution should be adaptable for future changes in operations and demographics. Again, as your community is changing, it might not be population, it might be age and just the demographics of what you're seeing, which does change the type of service that as a community you might need to provide for your community as well. So we want to make sure that whatever we're proposing has that adaptability and flexibility built into it. Each facility should maximize staff workflow and operation efficiencies. We want to make sure that, you know, the environment that we're creating or thinking about is comfortable and really creates the most operationally efficient facility, if you will. We also want to promote staff pride and wellness. Your facility should provide safe delivery of public services by the village staff. Which should be opening and publicly welcoming environment. So as, you know, a community member or resident is coming into the facility, are you set up to be customer centric, or are you more set up to be more staff centric, if you will? Plan for common sense sustainability approaches. We want to look at it, see where we do have initiative, or where we can maybe apply some of those common senses when we look at the facilities. Are there areas where we can be more efficient, where we can think through reimbursables, where we can think about adding things, but maybe not adding a whole lot of cost to create, geothermal or something that maybe we don't maybe think is a great option for this community. Recommendations should reflect today's immediate needs, while again being that adaptive and kind of supporting the future growth without starting over. We want to make sure as you change, as your community changes, as your staff changes, that the facility can do that with them. And then the investment should reflect the community's values and be fiscally responsible.
And I'll just reiterate the importance of this for us in our process is that those guiding principles are really that measuring stick for the options. So just preview, we could come up with 7 different options and maybe 7 of you would all pick a different option. And so the kind of conventional wisdom says that we would take those guiding principles and use that to measure the actual options rather than just subjectively compare one to another. So just again, we're going to be talking about those as we move forward and meet again. So sorry if you get sick of reading those, but I guess before we move on to sort of JR talking about that condition assessment, are there any questions or feedback like that on kind of what we've talked about thus far? Okay.
So one of the first steps, Jonathan laid out our process. One of the first things was gathering data. One of the ways we did that, or one of the tools we did, was created surveys. And so we put out an entire staff engagement survey that went out to all of the staff in the village. We also put out a survey for department head staff, which really helped facilitate our interviews that we had with them when we came up and kind of looked at their space and talked through workload changes, staff growth, that sort of thing. We also sent out a specific one to public safety just because, Station 2 is a paid-on-call facility. They function a lot differently than a full-time facility. So we kind of looked at how your community and how your village is set up, and we sent out surveys to kind of match the way that makes sense with the different operations that you guys have. So for the overall staff engagement survey, one of the things, these next 3 slides really talk about the overall staff engagement survey that we sent out. So we asked the staff, are there any workflow efficiencies driven by the layout of the primary workplace? And as you can see, more than 50% said yes. Again, it's a little subjective, but again, we wanted to understand, really from a staff perspective, are they comfortable in the space that they're working in today? Because we do know the environment that they're working in does have a huge effect on their retention. Retention. If they're happy working here, are they going to provide the best service for your community? We also kind of looked at condition assessments. So this one is ranking the importance of the following characteristics in an ideal workplace. So as you can see, blue are very important. Red is not so important. So the things that were really important were, proper workspaces, environmental comfort. So that's the temperature, is it cold, hot in your space? And then personal safety, along with proper support spaces and adequate storage. And then Joel. This one rates it in their current facilities. Again, 5 is far below average, which is the blue, and the 1 is 5 is above average, 1 is below average. So as you can see, some of those parts and pieces that were really important in terms of what the ideal set is were kind of below average in here. As you can see, they're further on the red or orange mark.
So I think that the takeaway on these is that it's maybe not real surprising. People are sometimes feel uncomfortable in the winter or the summer. So that's, kind of an obvious one. But some of those things that provide, a good space for staff, I think is important to just see if there's alignment and something that we should be focusing more on when we look at some of those conversations with individual departments. And when we start to tackle maybe some of the improvements to the buildings, we want to make sure that we start to look at this and capture those pieces so that we can address, individual staff needs, not just what we see from a facility standpoint.
Are you planning to do any other surveys of any other users besides the staff at all? Are you doing any more? that you thought of?
We weren't planning on it. No. Are you talking about maybe community or?
Well, I was thinking maybe the boards and the different committees that work in this building, that come in and out. I mean, obviously, they're not in and out as much as staff, but they may have some good comments on this room, for instance, or the sound quality, or whatever, just to get a feedback maybe from those groups that serve in an advisory type role or are in and out for meetings in this community, or in this building.
That's a great suggestion. It's something that we'll definitely take up to our core planning group and see kind of what we want to do moving forward. Yeah. So after we sent out the surveys, we then took a look at the condition assessment and the functional assessment. The condition assessment is kind of the infrastructure of the buildings that you facilitate out of. So the bones, you know, the mechanicals, electrical, and JR will kind of talk a lot more about that. The functional assessment is the space needs. So when we talk about the boardroom, for instance, right, and how it's being utilized, is it being utilized efficiently? Are we being able to provide the needs for your community and your staff?
So from our standpoint, we looked at the buildings overall, existing conditions for the next 20 years. What is the village up against in terms of maintaining this infrastructure ongoing? Right now, you're about 120,000 square feet total. And over the next 20 years, you're looking at about a little over $27.5 million worth of infrastructure upgrades. Some of those are big ticket items like roofing, some HVAC, electrical, exterior-wise asphalt upgrades and the like. One of the things I do want to point out is a lot of this front loads, and that is typical when you have older infrastructure that is at or past useful life. And that's why you see the large number on the left-hand side there. And then the more solid colors down, those are big ticket items like roofing. So where it's a one-time big dollar amount that's going to occur at some point in the future. So these are based on useful life, and when that useful life is up, it doesn't mean that infrastructure won't last beyond that, but this is typically where you're going to start to see a degradation over time. Joel? So we look at it and combine it with the FCI score. The Facility Condition Index is simply the deferred maintenance divided by what it would cost to replace a building. Unfortunately, I will say that all three buildings that we looked at are currently in a poor condition. This building is right at 30 years, and there's a lot of the maintenance items, the HVAC, the exterior of this building, the envelope, what have you, that is in need of some work. And that is where that's sliding that scale over. It's at that point of needing the work. It doesn't mean that it can't be salvaged and made to work just fine going forward. But that is just simply taking that cost of deferred maintenance and then combining that or dividing it by the cost of replacing this building. When you get to that critical standpoint where it's over 50%, that's when you really have to start considering, is this worth investing in? And these buildings are new enough that you could make the investment and extend the life of these for the future quite a while. Next.
So I just want to point out,
absolutely.
the amount that he indicated is kind of our do nothing, right? If you did nothing, no plan changes, operational, there are still amount to do that. If you do any plan changes, you know, it kind of it's not on top of what JR is talking about from a cost perspective.
Correct. That would offset some of the deferred maintenance because some of those systems would be touched in the process of updating facility. So this is looking at the Village Hall, and we're going to break this down. So we're going to look at the condition assessment and the functional assessment components. Go ahead, Joe. I'd like to call this the greatest hits. So these are some key items that were noted in this process. In the Village Hall, top left corner, you can see the crack along the side. Every single one of the corners in this building actually has that, and it's potentially a construction error in terms of not having the, was it?
Control joint.
Yes, the control joint in that structure to allow for the expansion and contraction of the exterior of the building. On top of that, the gray is actually some joints that the seals are just, they're not there anymore. and so it needs to be resealed. Windows are original to the building, and you're seeing a lot of the seals failing, which is causing the glass to, in essence, become stained internally. HVAC has had its useful life. Now, there's been some changes, some motors put in, there's a couple coils that have been replaced, but in essence, everything in this building is original, and that it currently stands as kind of inefficient. And I say kind of because there's some energy components that were added, but they appear to not be functioning ideally. And then a rooftop unit up there, that's an original rooftop unit, and it's just had its useful life. Next. The other part of this is just the dated interiors of the building. Some of the flooring has been replaced. I'm sure there's some paint along the way, but a lot of these interiors are actually dated from 1994 to today. It doesn't mean it's not functional. It just means it's at a point where things are going to start failing. And I know it's not a great picture, but if you look under the bench there, some of the tile outside over here by the public safety or services side is actually starting to pull apart. And that's typical of systems starting to fail over time. So I'll pass that on.
And I won't go through each one of these, but again, as we look at the village hall, we did talk through talk to all of the different departments. So again, it started with a survey. We used that as a starting point, and then we talked to all the different departments throughout the village. And I won't go through all of these line by line, but one of the big things from like the administration, which included HR, attorney, administrator, and the president, was kind of a lack of privacy for HR. There is no real office on that side of the village hall. So again, if somebody needs to talk through a personal issue or have, want to talk to someone in HR, they have to walk through the entire open office to have that conversation, or go in a conference room that's got scheduled, that's pretty large in scale of the amount of people that can be in that conference room. There is a benefit of having kind of the attorney and the HR and communications and administrator by each other. So there is no thought of removing kind of that space or that side, if you will, and the people that are collectively there. But there might be some potential growth, in the communications and HR. Those are relatively new positions. So we're just trying to think of how that might grow in the future and make sure that we're being accountable in that as we are planning and thinking forward. Municipal court, there is no security at their customer counter. If anybody's ever been out over there, it's an old door that someone put plexiglass on. So with them being on the public safety side and sometimes dealing with people who aren't super excited to come pay court, there is kind of a security measure there, and they are all by themselves. There's no other second, staff area that they can go to. Their back door is really the boardroom, which they do like, and they would like to maintain that connection for when they do have municipal court. The clerk, right now, they are separated from kind of the elections piece. So just kind of consolidating their space, if you will. And then just, again, security, that's going to be a main theme that you'll see throughout here is the counters that you have. Someone can jump over, they have swinging doors, there's really nothing preventing the public coming into staff space. Community development, they don't really have a whole lot of growth, but again, they have a very large counter that has a lot of openness and a lot of security issues to it. Finance and IT, because I think of where they're located, they're kind of the main point of contact for customers when they don't know where to go if they come to the village hall. And they're maybe not the right department to be at that front window. Again, there is a security issue, especially since they deal with money every day. It might be having sensitive conversations and public walking into that area. And then they are also, IT is in that space too, so there is no future growth for IT. The backup data room is maybe not necessarily in the ideal location because it's kind of within the office space, but, and the Dean Mark is in the public safety. So as JR was talking about kind of some inefficiencies, those are a few of those inefficiencies that we see from an infrastructure standpoint. And then we did talk about the on-site clinic and just maybe needing a little more privacy for people waiting so that they don't have to maybe wait in the lobby if they are sick or need to see the clinic. public safety, they have a lot of growth. I would say there was a lot of offices or storage rooms that got turned into offices because of their growth, if you will. Their facility at the moment, with the way that they model, having all of their staff, EMS, fire, and law enforcement, their facility isn't really set up to help create that efficiency in operations when we think through the type of service that they provide. They are very separated, especially fire has its own separate door to get into from the PD side. So it kind of creates some inefficiencies in terms of the operations. From a public safety perspective, on the fire side, there is no real decontamination. So when we think of the health and the wellness of your firefighters, there is no separation of like their turnout gear. There is no separate like ventilation or exhaust for those. When they maybe do have to go to a fire or have to come back from something, they don't have a spot to really clean their gear. It kind of gets put back in the truck area, if you will. So just kind of looking at creating some of those operational pieces and the health and wellness of the officers and your firefighters and EMS.
And their families.
And their families, yep.
Frankly. They're bringing that to their home then, too.
Again, public safety, as you can see, there was a lot of needs. Really, it's that they're out of growth. This one really talks about some of their support spaces. Locker room, there is no growth. The chief and the captains have to actually have lockers in their offices because they don't fit in that locker room anymore. And there is, again, this just talks about the decontamination pieces.
All right, fire station.
You guys, before you go to the next one, can I ask a quick question, just to clarify? So for the Village Hall and JR, hopefully I caught this right, you're not recommending that this be torn down and redone? All three buildings, you're saying, can be renovated and not have to be torn down? Okay, thank you.
So this building here is your oldest building. It's almost my age. It's 55 years old, or close to 55 years old, we'll say. Honestly, the biggest issue with this building, as we look at it, turn myself up. Next slide, please. Is just the general structure of the building. It's not used the way it was intended. Originally, it was a fire station. Now it is being used as the upper level as a school, daycare we'll call it, and then the lower is on-call staff. Because of that, the spaces themselves are, the storage in the lower right there is actually also a furnace room. It's just not conducive to staff coming in and out. It may be fairly quick, but there is some limitations. The driveways, because of where the school is nearby, if there's a lot of drop-off pickup, it could impact actually providing the services out of that building should it be necessary. The HVAC is it's not all original, but it is at its useful life. Windows are all mostly original to that building. And then the asphalt around that building is in extremely poor condition, as well as the exterior of the building. The rockcrete picture on the right-hand upper right there, actually that's a hornet's nest going in and out of the building. So there is actual bees inside the building in between the walls. Next slide, please. So this is actually the downstairs. It would not qualify as ADA accessible. So should there be a need for somebody to be in that space, there is no ADA compliance to this area of the facility. The meeting room or training center is the only, we'll call it, functional space in that lower level. Next slide. And then when we look at the classroom section up above, the picture on the left-hand upper picture is actually the original shower area of the fire station. The classrooms are both sides, and that was your day room and your sleeping area when it was originally a fire station. As you can see, the kitchen and that area become storage. The kitchen, actually, they have covered so that they can store books and stuff on the original stove area and in the sinks and what have you. So it is really, they've used that space extremely well for what it actually is. There was storage within the urinals. just because they don't have the space for that school area. Next.
When we looked at Station 2, again, because it's a paid-on-call model, we sent out surveys just because they function a little differently than a full-time crew would. And so, kind of to JR's point, it's an outdated building. That was a lot of the comments that we had. Decontamination was another big one. Again, these firefighters that are at Station 2, if they do need to, decon or clean their gear, they have to put it in their own personal vehicles, bring it over to Station 1 to take care of that, which again, then they're bringing all those toxins into their cars and potentially having an issue with their families. There is no ventilation in the apparatus bay. Actually, their gear turnout is in the middle of the apparatus bay, so when they come to maybe respond to a call, there is a security risk there with vehicles moving out. Again, with having the school nearby and the school up above, it's also a security risk with, again, those big trucks moving out of the apparatus bay there. And again, the only place that really does work is the training room that they use for classrooms. I know that nobody's here in terms of, dorm rooms or living spaces, but there are no bathrooms, there are no showers, there are no other spots. So if they do come back from a structure fire or something like that, they have no way to actually clean themselves.
Yeah, I know we've talked about it a little bit, and for us, in terms of the decontamination, it's something that we kind of look at all the time with these buildings, but I just want to reiterate again that what we found and the science has shown that there's an astronomical percentage of ex-firefighters that actually end up with cancer because of the exposure to those carcinogens. And so if you don't have a method to be able to clean your turnout gear, clean yourself, then you're potentially spreading that to your families, or of course you're being exposed to those things longer than you really should be. So it's something that we talk quite a bit about when we look at fire stations and the safety and wellness of your staff.
All right, so Public Works, newest building, it's 27 years old.
You guys, I'm sorry, can I ask one quick question about that facility? Did you talk to the nursery school staff or survey them at all about their use of that facility and any comments from them, or did you not go there at all?
We haven't yet. If that becomes part of kind of the overall plan, we certainly could, but right now we kind of just focused on, the village departments themselves and staff.
And that'll be probably on the last slide, one of those future considerations that I think our core planning group and our consultants need a little direction on, is that nursery school isn't a village function, but is provided village space. Is that something the board wants us to continue to entertain, or is that something that the board wants us to look at maybe potentially changing in the future? Because that'll dictate kind of our planning efforts.
Right, because there might be more space that the fire department can move into, and maybe there's a better space for the nursery school as well. Thank you.
So the Public Works facility, now this includes the Public Works, the cold storage behind the actual Public Works building, the salt domes, we'll call them, and then also the Parks and Rec storage facility. Obviously, the size of the Public Works building, the roof is actually one of the big dollar items in that facility. And so that's what stands out here specifically. Go ahead and go to the next slide. The asphalt around there, and obviously there's a lot of heavy equipment that goes through that, but the asphalt is at a point where it needs to be redone to maintain some stability in the base of that. The salt sheds themselves, physically they are fine. The problem comes in that dome and their functionality in terms of coming in and out, because you need a front end loader to access them, and it is a round building where you take a square, doesn't work really super well. So that is an issue, and the roof there, the roofs are at an end useful life there. The roof and the lower left-hand side, both the gutter system and the roofing is near actually, so you should get another really 10 to 15 years out of that roof, but it's actually been leaking pretty much its entire life. There's been issues with that roof from day one. The white line there actually is a seam. Now, why there isn't something there, I have no idea, but that could be a part of the culprit. And when that seam was opened or the seal was taken off, no idea. The control joints, the rubber, the white there, those are original. Now you're starting to see the degradation of the caulking on the exterior of the building. That allows moisture intrusion into the building. The HVAC on the roof there, the rooftop that serves the break room area, the office area of that building, is in pretty poor condition. Now, these slides are interior, and I really wanted to highlight this, is that this is lighting. That's all fluorescent lighting, both high bay around the lower picture, and both T12 and T8 fixtures, they're fluorescent. T12 is pretty old technology, we'll say. Probably should never have been installed in this building originally, because the T8s were available at that time. But that is an opportunity, energy opportunity for the district, or excuse me, the village. And that's actually all of your buildings. You have that potential to improve efficiencies at a minimal input to actually garner some energy efficiencies throughout with newer LED technologies. The HVAC is at useful life here in most cases. And the center picture shows a time clock. That's a control of all of the makeup air units in that building. I found that most of those time clocks actually had a different time. They may be 30 minutes off, but they're all running at different points. And that is an opportunity, again, from an energy standpoint, to consolidate into a networkable thermostat, digital, that would tie back, so that Brian would be able to monitor, or some facility could monitor when this equipment is coming on and off. Right now, when it's set up, it's running when it is currently scheduled to be on, and that can be overridden. The flooring in both the main building and the cold storage the concrete is just starting to wear. It's normal wear and tear, but it is at a point where the thought would be is to repair that garage floor to extend the life. Next. Yep.
All right, so again, the functional condition of the public works, this does include, as you can see, the vehicle garage, the cold storage, the domes, and then the park maintenance facility as well. So when we think through the staffing components of the public works, the lunchroom is really the only place where they can hold trainings and have maybe department-wide meetings, and it's just not large enough to meet those needs. And at the moment, there is kind of a separation between departments, and there are some departments that kind of have their department meetings out in the garage, which again, get disrupted by vehicles going through and just kind of there's some operational efficiencies when we think through how your departments are maybe mentoring or coaching or talking to their staff on a day-to-day. The locker rooms, the women's locker room is kind of underutilized, whereas the men's locker room is at capacity. So when we think through the gender piece of those locker rooms, there's obviously a different ratio there that we need to probably look at. Similar to public safety, just on a little different component, there is no decontamination area. So if, let's say someone's working on a vehicle and needs to have a change of clothes, or coming in from outside, there is no way that they can actually decon themselves or the vehicles that you guys have in your fleet. Again, JR mentioned it, the domes themselves, they're just not efficient in the way that you guys process salt and use it because of the dome shape that they actually have. And then really the biggest piece is storage. You currently have vehicles that should be in heated storage that's in cold storage, which then puts the cold storage stuff that should be stored somewhere outside, which again, as we think through asset, presentation of the fleet services that you guys have and the equipment that you have, it just takes a larger, beating, and it means that it's gonna be replaced sooner when maybe having it in a facility that it should be in, whether it's heated or in a cold storage, kind of helps preserve those pieces. And then the parks maintenance building, it's a little too small, and if you guys have ever been there, there's no lights and really nothing. It's just a door that gets closed, and there's no really security measures on that building either. Any questions? I'll kind of just pause here. Are there any questions regarding the facility or condition assessment that we went through? Okay.
You know, I don't know how we're operating the way you're going.
Well, Gary, this what they're presenting, at least on the condition assessment too, this is just a real short snippet of summary data. Brian and through JR and his group have a very, very detailed spreadsheet of all the various components and condition areas. So even though you're seeing like 6 images, there are literally hundreds of different components of each building that's been identified with useful life, condition, and you know, a schedule of repair or replacement. So this goes well beyond just even what you're seeing tonight.
You know, that goes back to the question, were we lax in our maintenance here for the last, since 94 when this building was built?
Can I answer it?
Actually,
I'll maybe touch on that a little bit. From a preventative maintenance standpoint, I would say we were very lax in a preventative maintenance standpoint on our facility. We were addressing strictly only things that were needed. You know, for instance, we'll use, you know, windows as an example. I mean, a lot of the windows, it's my understanding, speaking with staff, the windows have been failing for an extended period of time, and we've just learned to live with them. You know, they sound like water or snow's blowing in, so some of them are just hazy in some people's offices, where that could have been kind of a trigger as to, hey, let's come up with a plan as to when it needs to be replaced. JR did a very good job of putting that together, kind of assigning dollar amounts to those. You know, is the building going to blow over tomorrow? Absolutely not. Is there the potential for an air handling unit or something like that to fail? Yeah, and it could be, you know, $20,000 to repair. Generally what we've been doing, rather than just repairing the entire air handling unit, we just repair a singular component of that unit. So maybe it's a coil or a drive motor, rather than replacing the entire unit as a whole. So I guess the best way to think of it is, you know, think of a vehicle where, you know, it's getting to the point where it's needing a lot of repairs. We're kind of at that point now where we need to start coming up with a plan as to, you know, what do we do? You know, do we renovate what we have, or, you know, just determine what our best course moving forward is? So.
Brian, I noticed on here you have moving the compost site closer to where you guys haul it all to. Do you have space out there to put the drop-off site?
Yeah, so that's probably a big conversation we'll need to have, because that's going to be a huge change for everyone.
Yes.
The space is there. Unfortunately, the space right now is wooded with some very mature oak trees, stuff like that would have to come down. But the space physically is there. It's just, obviously there would be time that would need to be spent on that. I haven't run an analysis yet. I did it at a previous municipality, but the amount of money between fuel and just manpower to haul waste, you guys would be probably very caught off guard by it. It's the amount of time that we spend hauling our waste from here out to our compost facility is well over hundreds of thousands of dollars.
And the site right now is out by, is it by the Oneida Nation Casino? Is that where it is, or am I off?
Yep, it's just west of there. So if you guys are familiar with where Hobart's Village Hall is, it's directly north of there.
Okay.
All right, so once we had all those meetings to kind of talk about functionality, we want to figure out what does that mean, right? You can put anything on the paper, but when we start thinking of options, when we start looking at the existing building that you have today, what does that mean? And usually that means square footage, if you will. And so we started creating space standards. One of the big things that we found out throughout your facility and as we walked through is that you have individuals in 200 square foot offices, and then you have other individuals like your police chief that's in like 100 square foot office. And sometimes it's just because of where they were and where they fit within their department. But as we look at kind of creating equity, we start with space standards. Again, the thought, if we use the existing facility, we're not going to move a wall 10 feet just to meet a standard. We would create and keep the existing square footage. So this is really just as we look at space and maybe where we are compared to what you have in your existing facility to what you might need. This is just one of the ways that we kind of create that, a general look at it. And then,
I was just gonna say too, that it's also a way for us to sort of put a level of control on the square footage that's maybe being requested too. So we're meeting with every department and they're saying, well, we think we need another conference room and maybe another office or something. They're not saying, we need an 800 square foot office. They're saying, we need an office, and then we as a core planning group agree that that's the sort of consistent standard that we're gonna use for an office or a workspace or a certain size conference room, so.
It helps us, because Patrick already asked for an 800 square foot office and separate bathroom facility, and we were able to have Jonathan tell him no, and it was already dealt with.
It's a big ask, but I felt I had to do it.
We might have to come back to that.
yeah.
Not another question.
So just as we met with each department, that's kind of how we spaced or created our space standards. The existing column, as you can imagine, is what you guys are today. It's the utilization of your existing facility. So altogether, the gross square footage of the building that we're currently in today is, 50,655 gross square feet. When we look at proposed, in terms of the needs that were being requested, we're looking at kind of that 76,000 square foot marker. When we look at Station 2, this is where it gets, some of the conversations that we had earlier kind of come into play. As you can see, your facility today is roughly about 9,000 square feet. Part of that, again, is that childcare area up on the upper level. I believe that a proposed facility is very close to that same square footage. Again, it just kind of right sizes a few things, looks at that future growth of maybe what that station wants to be in the service area for it. And so that's kind of why it grew a little bit. But again, if the direction is to keep the facility where it's at, keep the same square footage of that building, I believe we could probably fit it in that 9,000 square feet. It just means that childcare building is no longer in that building. And then Public Works, we did separate it between office and then the warm vehicle storage. Again, currently you are at 48,735. Sorry, there's a weird thing happening on the slide. But the proposed for that facility is just over kind of 9 or just below 9.5, 96.5 thousand square feet. And then as we look at the cold storage, currently you have cold storage for Public Works and then a parks maintenance building. And the thought is it could be one combined cold storage facility if need be, which would get us closer to the 43,000 square feet.
Yeah, it may be important to go back to just on the Public Works side of it too and say that the increases are actually grounded in doing a full inventory of the vehicles. So knowing each vehicle that exists today, understanding the preference of where it should be stored to really preserve it for its longest life possible. And then we looked at what future acquisitions there might be, whether it's budgeted today or if it's something that as you look at development to the village or changes in service model, there might be some vehicles that get added. And so not only are we sort of correcting the deficiencies that exist now, and this is true for all of the sort of square footage increases, there's sort of a correction of maybe what's lacking in all those spaces, but then there's also a projection of if there's changes in the future, there may be some accommodation for additional square footage for that reason as well. So that's kind of the two components that would add up to why there might be an increase in square footage.
And then as you look at kind of the village hall portion of it, one of our guiding principles was, to provide, public safety, kind of be that customer service model, if you will. And so the current model today is you have one public lobby, one circulation space with a bunch of, counters or entries into departments, which again, from a community resident standpoint might create a wayfinding problem. They don't know what counter to go to. They don't know what door to go into. And so as we think of creating more of a customer-centric facility, going to more of a central counter and having one counter for all of the departments. So when your residents do come in, they have one counter to go to and it's kind of that one-stop shop. And so if you looked at the square footages, you don't have to go back to it, Joel, but Public safety was the larger indicator of that growth. The village hall was not so much, but part of that is there's a disorganization in the way that you guys serve your clients that we would love to correct.
So this is where we're looking for some maybe more direct feedback from the board, and I'll go through each one of these individually, just to try to garner as much feedback as possible. It gives us maybe a little bit more direction on kind of where we're gonna go next with some of the options development, and or maybe questioning some of the square footage changes or something like that as well. So this is the chance to speak up if you would like.
Can I ask, I didn't write it down. Can I ask what the age of each of them buildings was? You said Station 2 was 50?
1970,
55 years old on Station 2.
yes,
And Public Works buildings were
97,
built in 97. And this one was 30 years,
94.
94. Were environmental testings ever done?
As
In
far
terms of
as-
like hazardous materials or,
Yep, especially for Station number 2.
yeah,
No, if it was a visual, I mean, something like a 9x9 tile
Yep.
or something like that where you could flag it, I did not see any of that in
Alright.
the station, so I did not say there's,
Sure.
it arguably probably does have something, but it also doesn't have a boiler.
Okay.
So there is nothing like that,
Yep.
so you couldn't see any pipe, so.
Got it.
good question. So just as we go through by a facility, I think looking at accommodating that change in square footage for Public Works and some sort of expansion, I think, one of the main questions is, does it make sense to have a singular facility or sort of distributed buildings? And then the other question would be, or just looking for feedback is, as you look to expand sort of out to the east, could those community spaces like the community garden and soccer fields be relocated to maybe take that site and dedicate it more directly towards Public Works? And so it doesn't mean that, those things go away. It just means having to find a new location for those so that there's adequate space for Public Works operations, because, there's the building component of Public Works, but, there's an equal part of the site that's needed to circulate all those vehicles around as well. So I think we started to look at that and identify that it's likely that you would have to start to expand out to the west quite a bit. So I'll stop there on that one and just see if there's feedback.
Well, I'm going to make the comment on all of this. I certainly appreciate that you're asking the village board for that input, but I'll be honest, those people at that table who have to work in the environment is the most important. I would prefer them to be asking that question and then to be coming back to us, for us to sit here and say, oh yeah, no, I think you should get rid of the community garden and the soccer field. No, that's staff's job, is to figure out what out of your findings, what do we think is something that they can work with. You talked about buy-in. That's the reason why I say that. Because every one of us is going to have a different opinion on these, but we're not the ones that are working with that environment every single day. They are, and it's more important for them to be giving their input and deciding what is the priorities and the importance of things, and the buy-in from them, and then they bring it to us, and then we can say, okay, yeah, how does this fit in with the community and to the residents that we serve? So I don't know that it's really, I don't see you gaining anything from our input right here. They need to be the ones to give the input.
Yeah, and I'll push back a little bit on that thought, Jay, on this particular topic. I think, certainly our staff, in particular our line employees, not even necessarily our department heads, are gonna give us a lot of good feedback as far as the functional aspects of the facilities. But we also recognize, based on where our consultants are today, based on those numbers that they had presented in the previous two slides, there will likely need to be, if we maintain the existing site where we're at now, a pretty decent size expansion to either the main facility in Public Works or cold storage. And in order to get things operating in a manner that our line staff find functional, will impact things that have an impact to the general public and the community, like the gardens, like the soccer field. That's a policy decision. Are you okay with that? Because if you're not, and those facilities need to stay, then that first bullet point about having a singular facility for public works operation becomes more important. Now we have to start talking about if the gardens and the soccer field are vitally important to stay in that location and not be relocated. Now, in order to accommodate the functional space, now we have to think outside that box and say, well, does Parks and Recreation need to have their own facility offsite then? Because we won't be able to accommodate their space needs at this location. Do utilities need to locate to a different location? And then what synergy issues? I mean, we would be able to describe that to you, that, you know, maybe there's some synergy issues then because utilities and public works works a lot together. Arguably Parks, Rec, and Forestry does too as well, but maybe they're a little bit less likely to be synergized with public works.
But I feel that that needs to be brought to us when we're ready to be making those decisions. At this time, you're still in the middle of doing your study, and I can say, yeah, no, I don't want to lose those, but I don't know. I can't make that judgment. I can't make that judgment right now to say the community spaces, the community garden, and soccer field should be relocated. I don't know.
Yeah, and I think once you see it graphically, obviously we didn't provide the graphics for the reason of we didn't want to create the shock.
Based on the feedback that you're giving, we need to change. We have to massively increase footprint in certain areas, especially in public works, park and rec. I don't disagree with that. Yeah. I'm just saying I think to be asking the 8 of us, you know, okay, here's what do you guys want to do? I don't know. I don't feel like I can give you a good qualification on that to say, because I haven't had somebody come up to me and say, yeah, no, you can never get rid of that community garden. No, I don't know. That was my point.
Yep. I mean, I appreciate your comments. I wholeheartedly agree. And I mean, you saw at the beginning of our presentation, feedback from staff and getting that full picture from everybody is vitally important to us. I would say the reason we have these up here is almost more just a gut check on if there's any sort of political items that we should maybe try to consider or stay away from. And, you know, from what I'm hearing from you, it's, you know, kind of everything's on the table until we come with a recommendation, which we do plan to do. But I think, again, we wanted to we started to identify these things as we start to, you know, this is a precursor to maybe some of the options that you'll see. And we just wanted to make sure we're not, you know, heading down a path that just is not sustainable for the board to support. So, you know, that's my perspective that these questions are intended to address.
You know, I understand where you're going with all this information you're giving. It's like building a new building. You'd incorporate all this in it when you're doing it. You know, we've been fortunate to keep everything in this house for this period of time. Now, in the last 4 years, I'm going to say, there's been a lot of changes in this building that we had no input in, and it worked out very well within the staff and how it was done here. I've never seen so much organization here within these last 4 years of the different groups working together than running across the hall like you're saying. You know, they put things in their own corners where they're all working together, like the engineering, the finance, so on down the line. You know, going back to your number one question here, we've got enough property here to do something if we had to utilize the public safety for office space and build a public safety building, we've got a lot of land to the east here that we could do something. That soccer field or practice field, whatever you want to call it, that's just ground to me. That can be put someplace else if it has to be. But keep the buildings within the locations that they are. If we have to separate them, at least The communication is where I'm going. It's important to know what everybody's doing and how they're doing. I do not see taking the Public Works Department and putting it in a 10-mile, I don't want to use 10 miles in a 5-mile, away from this building where all the decisions are made. But I go along with you, what you're saying, Jay. Those are the people that should be making the decisions, and we'll work with them. What are we gonna do? We're gonna say it's a financial thing. That's what we're gonna say.
Right.
If you think that wall should be moved, move the darn thing.
Right.
So, that's my 2 cents on this.
When I saw those questions, I thought, yes, it makes sense to have a single facility for them. And on relocating the soccer field and garden, that soccer field is named, isn't it? I mean, does that add any issues to, like, can we just move it? Or like, do the people who named it have to be involved in that? Isn't it named after somebody? I
Yeah,
don't
it's
know.
named after
Diamond.
Bill Diamond, who was our finance director. It's named after him, so.
I mean, I'm in favor of moving it if we need to move it to, or is it, how much utilization is going on that field and also the garden? I mean, do we have to move it, or can we just not have it anymore?
No,
That's a question for
they're
Rex.
both highly utilized aspects of our parks and recreation system. So the soccer field is used quite a bit by the recreational soccer program, and the community garden is
Huge.
sold out every year,
Huge.
and it's heavily used. I don't know that you could just simply get rid of them. I think you'd have to find a space to relocate them in some other facility. And I think Jonathan said it best, is just if there's any like political landmines, if you will, of having those conversations, we definitely want to avoid those. And that was the point of having this conversation. And it relates to number 4 on there with Fire Station 2, the childcare
Right.
has been a longstanding thing in this community. I understand it had pretty substantial community support, at least in the beginning. I don't know where it sits today. But again, that could be one of those things where, the village of Ashwaubenon is now kicking out this nursery school, and now we have nowhere to go, and we're going to
Ideally,
impact
it should
100 families, and
Ideally, it should be down Cormier.
sure. So those are the things that we wanted to avoid, that we didn't want to just show, hey, we're eliminating the childcare center, or we're going to get rid of the community gardens, because we know Rex is going to be upset that his vegetables aren't going to grow again this spring. So we wanted to make sure we took care of that.
Well, and the other part of the whole back area is what we talked about with Brian, is the compost site. If that was relocated, that's a huge space back there. So maybe it doesn't have to impact the gardens or the soccer field. So I think that should be considered. I know there's a lot of work into moving a compost and a lot of environmental things you have to think about, and I hate to see the oak trees go down. But I think that should be considered as well. And, looking at your guiding principles at the beginning, one of the things you talk about is to meet our immediate needs but support future. When this building was built, they met the immediate needs of this community. Since that time this building was built, I mean, I was the Parks and Recreation Director when we built this building, and we picked that prime spot, which finance is in right now. Not a great place for finance, I agree, but it was a great place for Park and Rec because we were the ones that people were coming to see. Public Safety had a dispatch center when they first opened in this building. So obviously that space is just built for them, and again, jerry-rigged to make it better. So there are some major things I think that need to be done in this building, and we have to consider everything. And the nursery school, my daughter went to the nursery school. She's now 34, so she went to that nursery school, and it was there well before we were here. But maybe there's a better space. There's maybe the fumes going up into that nursery school that those kids don't need to be smelling anymore. So I think we just need to really, like Jay said, we have some part in this, and there's some really high-end political type decisions, I think, and over-encompassing decisions. But staff is using the facilities, and they know, Rex knows, hey, I can move soccer to here, I have space, or if I expand this, I can maybe move soccer there. Or he knows there's no way in heck I have space for that. So, I agree with Jay, but I think we have some decisions to be made as well as a board politically that we think are yeses or nos.
As we've had some banter, hopefully everybody's read ahead to the other topics. again, I, welcome any feedback on that. I think, not only just on the items that we kind of talked about, but also, is there anything that we're missing too? I mean, something that, maybe a department that we didn't talk about or, outside entity that we need to get feedback from, so. The precursor to those questions is really for us to start to develop those options, and, Joel kind of had the bag open with the cat starting to come out that we've started to look at some of these options and what that looks like and how to accommodate some of those needs. Ultimately, it's the work of ourselves, the core planning group, to really develop a few set of options that we feel best suits the guiding principles and meets the square footage needs, while also probably trying to address some of the condition assessment pieces. So, in the near future, we'll have some of that stuff developed that we'll be looking for some feedback, or at least be able to present kind of what some of those recommendations are. And that's where that evaluate options comes in as well, is not only we're just kind of drawing things, but, we're working closely with KA to start to look at what does this actually cost, and that sometimes comes into play when we're analyzing those options and seeing like, what's the best investment here, and is there a way to phase something differently, or, what are some of the priorities, like which of these needs do we try to address first, so that, it's a, good cadence of improvement over the course of time without leaving something that's major, at the back end of that whole plan.
So I think just to wrap up is I understand it that there's not necessarily anything sacred by the village board at this point, that you want to look at a few options that are going to be best suited for staff and operations. And so we'll go and continue to work with Wold and Kraus Anderson to develop those options. As mentioned, we'll provide those options for the board with an evaluation of those various options, and then go from there. So we'll continue to work on this project.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Are
It's
we
all
safe
great,
to
thank you.
Are we safe to continue this in this building? We're all right for a while?
Get out of here, buddy.
It sounded scarier than I think it really truly is.
We
but-
just got a new chair here, I don't want to make sure the floor is all right.
Well, Rex broke his arm on his chair, so just take it easy.
This is just information tonight, right?
Yes,
Yes.
yeah.
So when do you have a feeling when you'll come back with some final, I mean, what are we talking,
I think
months?
we have a couple months before we come back, so probably February or March of next year.
How long have they been working on this now? I know we
started
approved it
maybe
some
June
time
or
ago.
July, I want to say. May. Yeah,
August?
yeah, they're moving very quickly.
Okay.
Gary, I understand you have space available in your garage that we could move into?
I got room for one more car.
Okay.
Oh, I know what I was gonna ask too. I know we talked about the new fire truck that we took on. Are we gonna look at that at all in the slow study? Because we talked about that. Is that something they're gonna look
old
into?
one.
Or the old one,
Yeah.
yeah, the new old one, I guess.
That's a good point. I do need to talk to you about that
Oh,
new
I'm
old one, but yes, we do need to.
Okay.
My comment, I guess, out of all this, I know we're not really, it's just information, but my comment was Station 2 is age, the potential for all the environmentals, its location. My thought would be to abandon that property, potentially sell it off, alleviate having to clean it, tear it down, and moving that whole thing somewhere to a better location and incorporating a showcase or a glass box for that antique fire truck.
That's a good idea.
Because there's just so much. These old buildings, I know this area well, I know what you're gonna find. It's gonna be extensive and it's gonna be expensive to renovate. So that's my only comment.
Point, yeah.
The rest of it, I mean, these buildings, in my opinion, are absolutely workable. It's where we're gonna move this. I mean, office space is a problem. Obviously, public safety is, it sounds like we need to really look at that a lot sooner than later. Public Works, sorry, yeah. And kind of go from there, but that's my only comments.
Well, Chris, you're in the business when you start remodeling something that old, they can give us a price, but that's an open
The
checkbook.
minute you get into them environmentals, it all changes, and unless you've actually
Don't-
checked
don't
it,
quit.
you're gonna get stuff even into the 90s that I've seen here that test positive for asbestos above 2%, and you're gonna really be wondering, how did that happen? And then you're gonna dig into Chinese drywall and exactly, and ceiling tiles and just all the stuff that you would never have guessed. And I mean, I've seen stuff into the late 90s put in that is extremely riddled with asbestos for no apparent reason. So my only comment would be to really look at that building.
Okay. Thank you very much. Yep. Okay, 10D, consider, discuss, act on special event application for Epic Marathon and Running Festival road closures. And
So public safety doesn't have any concerns with the route?
Nick, public, public safety
on,
doesn't have
Nick.
any concerns?
Tell us how you really feel about closing down every road.
I know.
Yeah, so, I thought Ryan, is Ryan online? Okay, I kind of expected him to maybe be here tonight, because I told him that there may be some concerns. But we'll, I guess, run with it. So, from public safety's end of things, I mean, I'm not here to, I guess, promote or not promote an event. I can tell you, we don't, if the event is approved, we have no problems making it work. Obviously, there's concerns with the route. We had to reroute it once. They wanted to use Armed Forces Drive. And speaking with the Rush Center, there were 2 events going on. There's a circus going on at the Rush Center with 2 shows on Sunday, I believe, at least 2 shows. It was 10 and 2 for sure. And there's also the Whammo Dart Tournament, which is encompassing all of the expo. That's an all-day event as well on the day of the race. So Armed Forces was not going to be able to be utilized. They also wanted to use Lombardi on the backside of the Rush. They couldn't use that either for those reasons. So they rerouted back down to south on Oneida to Morris over to Holmgren. So the route is different from previous years, which I guess causes a little more concern on my end. They start at the Epic Event Center and then head west on Cormier, crossing Holmgren and Oneida, which is new. We didn't normally have to close those intersections down. And then, I don't know if I can share my screen. I can show the route for those visual people, kind of like myself. Okay, let me get over to that. All right, so this is the half marathon route. The green dot, right on Cormier here, if you can see where my cursor is. So that's gonna be the starting point. It's gonna head west on Cormier. It's gonna cross Holmgren right away, cross Oneida Street, continue west up the hill to Ridge. The full marathon is gonna continue straight. The half marathon is gonna go up Ridge Road to Morris and then do an about face and come back down and then continue back on west on Cormier. From there, the route is identical to previous years for the half and the full marathon. If I can switch to, I'm gonna try to switch to the half to the 5K here, but it's not letting me do that. There we go. All right, so this is the 5K route. Why is it? There we go. Perfect. It's kind of similar, but it basically starts at the same spot, west on Cormier to Ridge Road, and then goes up past Morris this time, where the other race turned around. They continue all the way up Ridge Road to Lombardi over to Oneida, and then Oneida down to Morris, which is how the half and the full finish as well. They follow the same route down Oneida Street to Morris to Holmgren. So obviously all these streets are impacted by the draft, which will be just a week opening, I think, a week prior to this, by the time the stage is removed. And then 1 week later, we close this down for one day only this time, but for a majority of the day, especially the morning is the most impacted because the 5K is usually a couple thousand runners and very tightly packed because it's only a 3 mile race. So the impacts traffic-wise are far greater in the morning. Usually they start spacing out by 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, and then it's just the end of the half and the full, which they're pretty spaced out by then. So getting cars across usually isn't a problem by then, but there still are traffic delays.
I've talked to all the department heads about this. This will literally close some streets that are major streets. 3 weeks after all the people are here for the draft, that all these streets will be closed. Some of them for Oneida Street, they're gonna close starting in March. Plus with the staff to run this event, Public Works staff has to put barricades and all that stuff, so that's where I have a problem.
Has there been some pushback and discussion with them, Mary, about running the event like in June?
I have not had any discussions with them on the date at all.
Yeah.
Because that to me would be a little more.
I'd feel better if it got moved too.
Palatable, yeah.
If we could, that to me would make more sense. I mean, you guys are gonna be so stretched, and then you're gonna turn right around, you're gonna get done with one, and then wham, you're gonna have to bring everybody in on a Sunday again for this?
And correct, and a lot of we need a lot of mutual aid to make this work. Our department can't run this by herself. We need help from Green Bay Metro Fire for the medical tent. They basically handle the entire medical tent for us. We have to get help from Green Bay PD and Oneida Tribal Police Department, and I'm assuming that all of the internal departments within the village, within the county, are going to be involved at some level in the draft. So kind of all of us will be in the same boat. We have restricted time off. I've already put that memo out for this weekend, for this event, which we've had to do every year since they've come to the village and started and stopped in the village. So obviously we got back-to-back time off restrictions with the draft and then with this marathon.
And we don't even have a guarantee that the county will close. Oneida, is it Oneida and?
Yeah, they need to get county approval for Lombardi and Oneida because they're both county highways.
Right.
I don't know if that's happened. I know they were applying for it. I don't know where that sits as far as the approval process goes.
I don't.
And I would think that Green Bay would be in exactly the same situation we are. They got to be going, whoa, now we're gonna. I would like to see us just at this point table this and go back and have further discussion with them about moving it out because of the draft. We want to move it out like into June or something like that.
Sure.
I don't feel comfortable with approving this right now.
I
I
don't.
just don't.
Well,
It's a great event. I love it. I think it's good, but just because of where it's at this year, I just think it would be better to push it.
I also am not a fan of seeing Cormier closed. It's just such a busy street. Like, they could easily run that a different area and hold Morris or something that's just less traveled.
Yeah, the portions of Cormier they're closing this time, especially by Oneida and Holmgren, because Holmgren's going to have to be closed starting at Willard for northbound traffic, and then probably rerouted at Lombardi for southbound. So it's a greater impact than previous years, especially in Cormier.
My question every time there's a run in this village, it really concerns my wards and Chris's wards. They block off the streets. Are they going to have people there that when there's a break in the runners that they'll let the traffic go through? Because that's always a complaint.
Yes, that we typically will tell our officers that, and when I do our operational plans and we have our discussions on that, absolutely, they're told if there's a break in the runners that is enough that you can get cars through, get them through.
Because years ago, it was not that way.
No.
Yeah, and like I was talking with the 5K, it's a little bit harder because those runners are so more densely packed that it's hard to get vehicles across safely. It's usually not until the tail end of that 5K is when we really have the ability to start doing that. Okay. So, and then that is probably a little, 45 minutes. So, I mean, takes a while for a couple thousand runners to get through. Half hour, 45 minutes probably.
Well, it's just a concern that we get, because I get calls on that.
You know, maybe this year, because this is the first year that Epic has been sponsoring it, correct?
Correct.
Is it the same organizing group then? They've just have a new sponsor?
Correct. Yeah, it's Ryan Griesmeyer with Race Day Events is the one that
Okay.
has been handling the Cellcom Marathon post-COVID.
Forever.
And he is the one that's in charge of this race as well.
I mean, I wonder if they would, this is a big ask, but be willing to not have it this year because of the draft and everything else going on and say, you know, start fresh. Next year, you got a new site, you got a new route, all that stuff.
Yeah, I
And I know they probably don't want to do that because you don't
I can't
want
speak
them.
for Ryan to say whether he'd be okay with that. I know they have already started advertising and have already started taking registrations for this
I know
event.
they have.
So
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so,
I would move that we table this item for the pushback with further discussion with them on moving the date.
I would second
And
that.
also the elimination of Cormier from the route.
Yeah, I would definitely second that. I have to agree with you.
okay, are we talking Cormier east of Ridge, or are we talking all of Cormier?
I get they want to start at the Epic Center, but I just don't see running up Cormier as being, I just want to see them eliminate Cormier out of the route. I really do.
Yeah.
Yeah, the reason I ask is if we have used Cormier in all previous years, it's just they came from westbound from Ridge. They weren't on Cormier east of Ridge, so that's the change.
Yeah, and I guess it would be east of Ridge that I'd be the most concerned because that's where the heaviest traffic is.
Correct, yeah.
Right.
Oneida Street for sure. Cormier and Oneida is a big intersection, a lot of traffic, a lot of cars.
okay, so we have a motion and a second to table this. Okay, if there's no further discussion when it's a table. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Okay, E, consider discuss act on resolution R 12-1-24, resolution disallowing Houle. Patrick.
The Village of Ashwaubenon received a claim against the claimant, Mr. Houle, for damage done to an RV or his camper from a fallen tree that was city-owned, or village-owned, excuse me. We did provide it to our statewide our claim administrator. There was a recommendation to deny the claim. Without going too much into the detail, I can certainly ask or answer some questions, but there was a recommendation to deny the claim as there was no found liability on the village's behalf. Staff recommends to approve Resolution R12-124, disallowing the claim.
Move to approve ordinance R 12-124 to disallow the claim.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to accept resolution R 12-1-24, disallowing Houle claim. Any further discussion? You know, these are always tough, you know, when your insurance advises you not to pay them, but, you know, you have to understand that you have to listen to the insurance company, so. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. 10F, consider discuss act on resolution number R 12-3-24, disallowing Gleason claim.
Again, similar to the last resolution, there was a claim filed against the village for damage done to the basement flooring due to a water meter issue. Our statewide, our village insurance administrator reviewed the claim, finding there was no fault on behalf of the village. Based on the village's lack of negligence and immunity, the statewide insurance administrator recommended denial. Staff is recommending approving R 12-3-24, disallowing the claim. I guess I'll just point out too that this doesn't prevent anyone from filing suit against the village if they still want to collect. This is just a notice of claim. It's more a mere procedure rather than the village is going to approve or deny. So the due process is still there to, I guess, pursue any kind of suit against the village for any alleged negligence. But we don't feel there is any for either of the resolutions, so we would recommend approval of this resolution.
did the meter just
Yeah,
leak? And
Brian, are you
cause-
aware of what exactly happened here?
I'm just curious. I could see this being.
So essentially what happened here, over time, sometimes there's movements in between the basement floor and then the wall that the piping's attached to. So you get some vertical movement there, and it does, say the floor moves indifferent than the wall. It puts an additional strain on that meter, and the meter does have the ability to break or crack. Much like anything, if there is any bit of movement, we don't have control of the movement of the foundation of the home. Our meter was structurally sound. It was just had to encounter a stress that is abnormal. Ultimately, generally when you install a meter, you plumb for a meter, you leave a nice meter gap space, and you assume that nothing is going to move, but there was movement.
And I'll kind of touch on that a little bit too. And I spoke in depth with our utility supervisor on this, and it's somewhat of an unfortunate common occurrence in municipalities. These older meters, just by wear and tear over time, they break, and like Brian said, they're structurally sound, but they just kind of break, and the water damage is done. Now, homeowners insurance should cover it, and I know it does for this claim here, at least part of it. When municipalities are aware of the issue and they fail to correct it, that's when liability kind of comes on to the municipality itself. So for a lot of these claims like this, when they come through, the village isn't necessarily aware of that faulty issue. That's where the immunity would apply.
So the meter broke. I'm assuming they called the village right away. Somebody ran over the right away, shut the water off, or was it something they couldn't get a hold of somebody and the water ran for an extended period of time?
There's nothing that I'm aware of that, that we weren't able, the valves were still intact.
Yeah.
So ultimately, as soon as the homeowner became aware of, the leak, of course, too late, but you do generally have a valve on both sides of the meter and are able to just isolate. It's usually a quarter turn ball valve. That you can just turn the water off.
I think that was determined by the insurance liability adjuster as well, that where our liability rests is when we become aware of a situation and then how we respond to that situation. So like even the previous claim, had we had known there was an issue with the meter and then we failed to act, then we would hold liability. But because we didn't know that there was an issue with the meter, then we don't hold liability. And that's why there's a recommendation for disallowance.
I'll move to approve resolution R12-3-24.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve resolution number R12-3-24. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. 10G, consider, discuss, act on Second Amendment to Commonplace Building 2 Development Agreement.
I can take this one, Mary. So Merge LLC and the village entered into a pay-go TIF agreement. The construction was supposed to commence this December, but there was a request from the developer to start the construction in the spring, just given it's not necessarily optimal to start during the winter months. Staff has spoke with them, and we are fine with the extension, just given it's somewhat of a moderate pushback and for a delayed start to commence the project. We would recommend that the board approve the Second Amendment to the development agreement, extending the commencement of the project to May 31st, 2025.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to accept the Second Amendment to Commonplace Building 2 Development Agreement. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. 10H, consider, discuss, act on draft 2025 salary schedule for non-represented sworn public safety supervisors and commanders. Joel.
Okay, thank you, Mary. In your packet is a proposal to adjust the salary schedule for our non-represented sworn public safety officers. So this would be individuals that sit in the position of lieutenant, captain, commander, and deputy chief. If you recall, the village adopted a wage and salary graded base pay plan for general employees, not sworn officers, in 2022. That was then followed up with a wage study in 2023 for implementation in 2024. We did not include the sworn supervisory staff from public safety in that effort because they fall within a different pay schedule than our general employees, primarily and principally because of concerns about wage compression in relation to sworn officers that are represented under the collective bargaining agreement. The overall wage schedule that's being proposed to you includes a 2% good faith adjustment. This is in accordance to the collective bargaining agreement. Again, in an effort to avoid any wage compression between represented employees and then their supervisors within the same department. The overall pay plan that is being proposed to you is a fairly substantial increase in overall pay over and to be implemented over a 3-year period. So how it's being proposed right now is we're looking at providing the 2% good faith adjustment that we normally would have provided, and that would begin on January 1 of 2025. And then beginning on July 1 of 2025, we would provide an additional bump at a 6-month adjustment. And the purpose for that is to make this a financially viable endeavor for the village, but yet still provide those incremental increases to the staff to bring them into a competitive, comparable environment. After this calendar year, beginning January 1, 2026, there would be another 12-month adjustment. So you'll see that as year 1 on the pay schedule. And then again, following that on January 1, 2027, there would be another adjustment. All told, what we're attempting to do is bring our salaries to a comparable component of about 85 or the 85th percentile. What that effectively does is it allows us to be in that kind of upper third of salaries for positions of a comparable nature. And that's essentially what we're looking to do. All told, these wages are accommodated within the overall 2025 budget. We typically budget for these types of good faith and salary adjustments each year to accommodate the changes in the collective bargaining agreement competitive or comparative analysis that's done as part of that agreement. I will mention that Megan Noltner is here. She's our human resources generalist, and Megan did quite a bit of the heavy lifting on this particular project as it related to collecting data for comparables and then also running the analysis to make sure that those comparables are relative to our line of work. I will note that running comparables for our public safety department is extremely difficult. We're the only agency in the state that runs all 3 operations, police, fire, rescue. So the comparables that we're gathering is information and data from police departments, from fire and rescue only departments. And so we're trying to run an analysis to see, based on the job scope and the job responsibilities for those positions, if they are relatively comparable before we incorporate and include them in our overall analysis. So from a procedural or policy standpoint, I'd be happy to answer any questions the board may have on what is being proposed tonight. If you have questions specific to the comparables and the data that was collected, Megan can certainly answer those for you tonight as well.
So I was here for the Finance and Personnel Committee meeting, and I heard you say that nobody had any questions to pick on Megan. So we made her sit here for almost 2 hours now, so I am going to pick on her and ask her a question.
There we go.
So, Megan, what kind of criteria did you use to find the comparables, since we don't shore up directly with any departments?
Sure. So first we pulled the comparables that we utilize for the collective bargaining agreement. And then we looked at other municipalities that were local in comparison with equalized value and population. So we pulled those if they were comparable to Ashwaubenon, and then did outreach to determine if those departments, based on their organization structures, matched ours and were comparable.
Thank you.
And I have a question for you too, Megan. On the annual salary chart that you have, at the very bottom, it has the incentives list. Can you explain the incentives part of it to me, please?
Sure. So there's a base salary that is provided to each of those levels, the lieutenant, and then the incentive is if they have their certification. So if they're certified paramedic, then they receive that $4,000 incentive on top of their base. The other incentives, the captain and the commander, deputy chief, those incentives are on top of the lieutenant wage, and we do that to help with compression. So that ensures that we do not run into compression issues when our lieutenants have those incentives like the investigator or the paramedic incentive.
And to also just add some further clarity to that, so the table that you're seeing that shows the incentives, that green table, those are not in addition to the wages that are in the chart above. Those are just to provide clarity that that's this incentive value that's incorporated in it. So on the pay schedule, you'll see captain, paramedic, for example. That is the captain non-paramedic base pay plus the incentive.
Okay, so it's already in, that's what I was figuring it was. Okay, thank you, you guys.
All right, I'll make the motion to adopt the 2025 Public Safety Supervisor and Command pay schedule as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to accept the 2025 salary schedule for non-represented sworn public safety supervisors and commanders. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Number 11, items for next agenda. Are we going to have a village board meeting in January? Probably.
I believe we will have a meeting in January, yes.
Okay, if anybody has anything, just give the office a call. Number 12, I need a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. We're done.